I actually have some good news. Earlier this week, I got a full-time job offer for when I get out of my graduate degree. I'm going to be doing some system integration. So I'm going to be taking a little bit of all of my experience, and I'm going to be doing a system integrator level job down in Florida. So very excited about that. Going to be my first full-time engineering job. So very exciting. I thought to kind of celebrate, I wanted to kind of do a little bit of a reaction video to one of my favorite YouTubers. So, one of my favorite YouTubers, LGR, Lazy Game Reviews, has this series of really kind of strange computer designs that I think is really fascinating because it kind of shows us how far we've come since the birth of the computer and the microprocessor. And I kind of wanted to examine it kind of from more of an engineering standpoint because I think it's interesting to see a consumer's view of a consumer product, but then when you can take an engineer's perspective who actually built the product, you kind of can come together and you can have two perspectives on it. So as someone who's built chips, built computers, and done some system design work in the past with my internships and my coursework and my master's thesis, I think that I would be able to provide some interesting commentary on some of these designs. I'm very interested to see. I've watched these videos, but it's been like 5 years, so I'm very interested to kind of get back into it. And he's actually uploaded a new one for the 2010s, so I was around that time building computers, so it's going to be really cool to kind of see this really interesting blast from the past. So yeah, let's get started. He has five different videos from every decade from the 70s to the 2010s. I'm going to skip the 70s and 80s videos just because I don't really have a lot to say on those particular videos. I don't really have a lot of commentary to add just because the landscape back then was so different from what I've done and what I've been interested in and what I've been around for. So I just don't think it would really be very insightful from my perspective. I think I would just be like, oh, neat. And that would really be it. So I'm going to start with the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. Those are going to be the three that I'm going to be looking at today. So just keep that in mind.
Where boring beige boxes ruled the PC world. Or did they? Actually, if you know where to look, there was quite a bit going on in terms of experimentation and technological shots in the dark.
That is true. One thing to kind of consider is that the from 1990 to 1999, we had jumped up. I think it was about like a 10x increase in terms of CPU performance. In the early 90s, we were still in like the 100 to 200 megahertz mark in terms of our CPUs. And then by 2000, I think, is when we started hitting like 1 gigahertz and going past that. I believe AMD is actually the one that hit the 1 gigahertz benchmark. I don't know what year exactly it was, but in the 90s was a really, especially on the CPU side, huge time in advancement, starting with Intel coming in with 486, and then I think they ended off with, was the Pentium 4 in the 2000s? I think it was the Pentium 4 that really kind of was the big one there.
Design. The Compaq Presario 3020. Compaq had a grand old time designing unique...
I forgot that Compaq was still a company in the 90s. I believe HP, Hewlett-Packard, they're actually the ones that bought Compaq, I believe in like 2006. So they actually were around for quite a while. But the 80s really was Compaq's time.
all-in-one PCs in the 90s, and the 3020 is one of the more bizarre.
This looks pretty cool.
It's basically
like
a desktop crammed into a slim vertical case with an adjustable TFT LCD display built in, as well as a 4-disc CD changer, integrated speakers, floppy drive, and even a wireless mouse.
And it still looks better than Apple's all-in-ones.
So much so that the number of units sold is minuscule, and hardly anyone has heard of the thing. Apple's 20th anniversary Mac. Really an ugly slab with a subwoofer off to the side that looks like a trash can, and hardly anyone bought it at first.
I love how twice in Apple's history they made their devices look like trash cans. I love it. It's got to be a metaphor for something. It actually to me kind of looks like a CD player. A CD player with like a screen on it. It's interesting.
These PCs from 1999.
Oh, these are legendary. Oh, these are so cool. Oh, these are awesome. The problem is that only rich kids could have these because they were like $700 for and they were targeted to like a younger audience. So like you're 6 or 7 year old, you're gonna buy a whole computer for them because you guys gotta understand back in the day in like the 90s and the 2000s, what was common was you had like one home computer for everybody. You didn't have like you know everyone had their own like PC or laptop or tablet. It was basically just one home computer that everybody used. That was kind of how it worked. So buying one dedicated desktop setup for your kid at the time was just kind of very much out there. So this was definitely, I think that's why these are so rare, is because only rich kids could have them.
Mass hardware failings resulting in countless returns. It got to be so bad that the manufacturer, Patriot Computers, declared bankruptcy a year later, with thousands of orders going unfulfilled and people never getting their money back. The Sega Terra Drive by IBM, sold only in Japan.
I've actually heard of this before because I was actually into. I went through a little phase in high school with like retro consoles. I've actually heard of this. I think it was like the idea is that it's like a some Sega console, like a Genesis or something, or a Sega Master System, built into a PC. I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be like a dev kit or something, but it's really interesting. I think that it had like an x86 chip alongside whatever SoC was on that Sega. I forget what Sega console it is. Does he say?
And beginning in 1991, the Terra Drive was manufactured by IBM in partnership with Sega. Not only is it fully IBM PC compatible, but it features built-in Sega Mega Drive hardware as well.
Oh, so it's an IBM system. So I forget. Did IBM shift to Intel for their chips at this point, or were they still doing PowerPC in their own systems? I actually don't know what year that was, so this could potentially be a PowerPC based chip, but I'm sure it's got the Sega SoC in it too, right?
All your Sega controllers and games could be played alongside your DOS games. And
How awesome is that? How awesome is that to have that built in? Imagine if they did that today. Imagine if Microsoft literally just let you play your Xbox games on. I mean, I guess they technically do with the Game Pass and the Xbox 360 or the Xbox One or Xbox Series X. It shows you how long I've been out of it. All those games are x86 platform. Those consoles are x86 platforms, so the games are kind of cross compatible. But back then they were just building the hardware into a PC. Like that's really cool. But I just kind of wish they did more of that today. But you can't have that today because the idea is we have to sell you a subscription model, and then we also have to sell you like 50 different pieces of hardware for you to play your games on. But back then, they didn't care about that, man. They actually cared about making it convenient for people.
even worked as a Sega software development kit.
It was a dev kit. That's awesome. Oh, that's so cool. Oh man, if I was like around in the 90s, I mean, it's Japan exclusive, so I couldn't have got one, but I would have totally killed for one of these things, man. That would have been so cool.
Making for a killer combo. Amstrad also did a similar thing with the Mega PC in various PAL regions, but the Terra Drive remains the one more sought after by collectors. V-Sync's Internet Refrigerator. In 1998, Matsushita, in cooperation with Intergate Technology, were one of the first to jump on the Internet of Things bandwagon with the Internet Fridge.
20 years ahead of their time.
This was a Pentium 2-based PC.
Did Samsung steal this idea for their fridges? For their appliances? Because now we have to put a microchip in everything. And especially, I think it was a CES 2024 earlier in January this year, where I saw they're putting AI in fridges now, so that it knows like how to properly cool all your food, and like it has like a bunch of smart like regulation for temperature and stuff in there. It's pretty neat, but it's kind of goes to show you how far we've come. Like they were doing this back in the 90s. They kind of saw where the direction was going. So I mean, very very forward looking for its time, and the interface is very 90s too.
PC running Linux, outfitted with a modem and a ton of sensors, all jammed into a refrigerator.
A modem? So you could hook that up to the internet.
Voice.
What would you have done in the 90s with
keep
that?
Track of your food, shopping lists, and recipes.
Sound familiar? That's what they're doing now, 30 years later. It's all circular, guys. It's all circular.
It may not have caught on back then, but perhaps the day of the internet fridge is still to come.
See? I'm good. I'm good.
For a time,
That looks like
legacy-free
a coffee
internet
maker.
appliance PCs were the new hotness,
Looks like a
starting
coffee maker.
around 1999 when Dell released their Web PC. Referred to as legacy-free because they were built to use new hardware and software and not even bother with backwards compatibility, and internet appliance because their sole function was to connect to the internet.
And I think we're seeing that kind of functionality kind of coming back a little bit more today, because not necessarily internet appliances, but streaming appliances. So, like, all those like Android TV boxes that you see, it's not like this, not like a computer, but you actually can plug it into a TV, and it lets you have all your Android streaming apps and everything. So that concept is still around, and it's just, I find it so interesting how these, maybe not the actual design, because you don't have these big bulky towers anymore, but these kinds of concepts of like a smart fridge and an internet appliance or a streaming appliance, they're still around today. We never abandoned them. They just take new shapes as the generations, progress. I just think that that's really cool how we can see these analogs today. That's why I nerd out over this stuff, and I think it's important to look back at and see kind of what we were doing back then, because I think that there's a lot of wisdom, as proven by the fact that we're still doing it.
Dell's example is notable because of its mushroomy, funky design with a monitor jutting
Looks
out
like a
the
coffee
side
maker.
like some sort of mutation, and the oh-so-trendy colored faceplates that clashed with the
That were on top, so you can't even see them. Nice.
rest of its dark bluish-gray case. And that's all for this selection of...
All right, interesting. So let's move on to the 2000s.
was known for the rise of cheap, boring PCs from the
I had
likes
one of those.
Dell and
That was my first computer that I ever used that my family had. It was a Pentium 4 based system that ran Windows XP. That was the first computer I had in my family. Yep. I think everyone started with one of these. These things were everywhere.
E-machines, but it also saw its fair share of outlandish computer designs with manufacturers on...
See, look at that. Look at that. It's aluminum. It's got custom machined out decals on it. It's got red face plates that I'm sure has LEDs in it. It has that blue kind of shimmering glitter paper front plate in there. It looks like a transformer. One thing I gotta give the 2000s, man, is that they had such personality with their systems. We kind of strayed away from that in modern day. When you look at computers today, everything is either a black box with RGB in it or a white box with RGB in it. Computers today just don't have any personality anymore. They're all the same. And I really miss these days where like PC gaming was a lot more of a niche thing and people took a lot more pride in their systems. It wasn't just for gaming. It was about having a personality to it. And I mean, look at this thing. It's so cool. So I think that I miss that. I really do miss it.
The Apple iMac G4.
Okay, this one I'm familiar with.
Apple
I had a friend who owned one of these, or I guess his sister owned one of these. It was actually pretty cool. And I've actually seen a lot of modders use this system and actually mod it for modern hardware, because I think you have to machine out part of the back. You can actually fit an ITX board in there, a mini ITX board. So I've seen people put like Ryzen chips in these things and use it as like an all-in-one PC. It's actually pretty cool. But this is pretty neat. A pretty neat concept. And look at that. Back when Apple made keyboards that were worth a damn. What a time.
G4 Cube was an unusual design. Inspired by the look and shape of a sunflower, the 2002 iMac G4 was a bizarre follow-up to the 1998 G3.
A lot of Apple
The
stuff.
core components were packed into its bulbous base.
I will
as
say,
the LCD protruded from the top.
back in the day, Apple, I had to give them points for their designs back in the day. Nowadays, everything just kind of looks the same. It's just too minimalist. But back in the day, I will give it to Apple. They had some pretty cool designs under their belt.
Swung around on a metal arm like a desk lamp. While it was lauded for its elegant display, it was criticized for its relatively low power and high cost and discontinued.
Which makes sense because look at that thing. Look at how cramped it is. You got the vent at the top, a small one, and then I think you have a little bit of perforation at the bottom. So you kind of are limited in the design because you can't pack powerful hardware in there because you're never going to cool it properly. So you're pretty much forced to either open up the design a little bit more, which, Apple's never going to compromise on the way their products look, or you basically just have to utilize underpowered hardware. And we see this from Apple today. Their MacBook Air, the chips that are in them are clocked so low because they want a very, very thin notebook that doesn't have any fans in it. And the compromise is you have to clock the chip so low so that it doesn't overheat and throttle or power off or whatever the case is. So, yeah, that mentality of utilizing underpowered hardware, cramming it into a very cramped chassis that's not going to properly dissipate heat, and then charging a buttload of money for it, that's still very much seen in Apple today.
This was a time when
This
the Ultra
is
Mobile
cool.
Personal Computer, or UMPC, was poised to take
It's like
the
a
world by
PDA.
storm. In 2006, and OQO's
That's
Model
pretty
02
cool.
was a much lauded
And it
example.
runs like
Starting
actual
at
Windows.
$1,500, this particular UMPC
$1,500.
was introduced by none other than Bill Gates in 2007 and featured a fully functional Windows Vista
Of course, they got
operating system
Minecraft running on it. I
small
love
enough
it.
to fit
That's
in their
awesome.
pocket. However, the battery life was pretty abysmal, and the BlackBerry-like keyboard was lacking.
I'm wondering, I don't know if Windows on ARM was in development at this point. So what I have to wonder is, for this device, is it an x86 chip? It would either be AMD or Intel. If this is an x86 chip running, like, is that full blown like desktop Windows? It can possibly be. You could not in 2007 having that on a mobile platform. That would be insane. That's really interesting, though. I this would be really cool to like tinker with. I would put like Ubuntu on this thing and see what I could do with it. That's really neat to have. The problem is I've seen this before. Someone did a YouTube video kind of reviewing it. These things are expensive on the secondhand market because they're so rare and people like collect them. So that's unfortunate. But this is a really, really cool machine, I think.
At W700DS. What's better than a computer with a built-in display? A computer
Awesome.
with two built-in displays.
At college, I actually see a lot of people using ThinkPads from Lenovo, and this would be really cool if you could implement it in the modern day. Having an extra screen on a laptop, just for like if you're doing any sort of design work or especially programming, having that extra screen real estate to extend a design or to have another window pulled up so you can monitor something or test something. That's just so helpful, especially for engineering students. So I really wish they brought this back, but the problem is with this kind of thing, if you want to have multiple monitors in a system, especially a laptop, it makes it a lot thicker, so it's harder to move around. And then additionally, since it's going to slide in and out, that presents a mechanical problem. So eventually you'll get wear and tear, and the screen might just break, or the ribbon cable that connects to the screen might just snap or something like that. So there's a lot of practical limitations as to why this is not an easy thing to do.
Or so went Lenovo's thinking in 2008 with their dual-monitor ThinkPad W700DS laptop. The idea behind it was that workstation users on the go could always
That's
use
really
another
cool.
screen. So a smaller LCD
And shout out to
panel
Windows
slid
Vista.
out of the side like some kind of cancerous growth. Other than looking bizarre, the big problem was that it weighed a hefty 11 pounds.
Yeah, it has
was
to be
over
thick.
2 inches thick, and the battery lasted maybe 2 hours on a good day.
Yeah.
The Disney Dream Desk PC. Never missing
That's
a chance to slap mouse
funny.
ears on something, the Walt Disney Company released the Dream Desk computer in 2004.
Disney also released. They also had their own cell phones back in the day. They had their own cell phones with their own phone plan, and you could get like exclusive like skins and games and apps and stuff from their cell phone service. I watched a whole documentary about that too. That's pretty interesting.
By electronics giant Medion, it featured a Mickey Mouse head display with built-in speakers,
and it had a bunch of like Disney games on it too, right?
And that's all for this particular.
All right, that's pretty cool. Yeah, early 2000s, man. Everyone was trying to make everything stylish. Let's check out 2010s, the most recent one. Okay, so the 2010s. This is when I started building computers, so I think that this one's going to be pretty nostalgic for me.
In 2010 to 2019 were a
I remember a
turbulent
lot of this
time in the
stuff
pre-built computer market.
because
The
this
rapid adoption of smartphones and
this was the
tablets,
age of like
along with computers
YouTube
becoming good
and
enough to
people
stave
doing
off
builds online
obsolescence,
and on
led to
Reddit and
such
stuff like that.
stagnation
So
that several media
yeah,
outlets declared the death of the personal computer outright.
yes, because this was that age where like so you can see 2010 to 2014 things were kind of stagnating. That was primarily because the CPU technology just wasn't advancing. I think this is projection, but I mean, it wasn't too far off because remember in 2010 that's when Intel came out with, was it Bulldozer? I think it was it their Phenom? I believe I'm not entirely sure, but I would think it was their Bulldozer architecture in 2010 that flopped, and then Intel came out with Sandy Bridge, which was awesome, and then Intel for the next like up until 2017, Intel just kind of rested on their laurels and didn't innovate, and then AMD just couldn't catch back up, and yeah, it was just a very stagnant time in the desktop market. Nvidia and AMD wasn't doing much in terms of the GPU advancement either. Again, 2016, 2017 is really kind of when they bucked the trend, but up until that point, it was rough, man. But we still saw some pretty cool stuff, and I can't wait to see what he picked out here.
But instead of dying, they evolved
Oh, yes, the
with more
Surface.
eye-catching experimental designs than ever.
Ooh,
So
I didn't
let's
know
look at
Lenovo
a
did
bunch
gaming
of computers
PCs.
from the
That's neat.
2010s.
And then the
This
trash can Mac.
2013 refresh
Yes.
of the Mac Pro raised many an
You said
eyebrow compared
2013?
to
That
the
sounds about
relatively
right.
utilitarian
I
design
saw
of the
people who bought this
2006
on
model
YouTube.
it was replacing, affectionately
People
known
made
as
so
the
much fun of
trash
this
can
thing.
Mac. It packed everything into a glossy
They made
10-inch
so
tall
much fun
dark
of this
gray
thing.
cylinder.
It was the
The
trash
lack of
can
internally
PC.
upgradable processor and graphics was a common criticism, especially seeing how a maxed out Pro cost about $10,000, but its Xeon and Fire Pro based hardware
And
was
today, that's
top-notch
chump change
stuff.
for a Mac.
And you still had plenty of external expansion via Thunderbolt and USB. And despite the controversial design, the
Oh,
Mac
you
Pro
could
wasn't replaced
upgrade the
until
RAM.
2019.
They took that
And
away.
machines like the HP Wave and Samsung Art PC Pulse, arriving in 2016 and 2017 respectively, seemed to copy Apple's homework. Each of which I might have included in their own section of this video,
Samsung
but I didn't. So let's
Samsung
move
wants
on
to
from
be
the
Apple
trash
so
cans
bad.
to the Alienware Area 51.
Yeah, I remember this. This
Dell
was
subsidiary.
they were making this like when I went to college. Like I went to college in 2017. I think that this was still being made like 2015 to 2017. Um yeah, it was bulky, but I don't think that this is like the weirdest thing they ever did. I think now like, even modern Alienwares, they still kind of slant the case a little bit for airflow. But no, back then this was it was pretty interesting. It definitely looked cool. But when Dell bought Alienware, the stuff they were doing, man, it just kind of got more and more out there. And this thing was really expensive. I think it was like $5,000.
The Alienware made plenty of brightly colored Area 51 PCs in the 2000s,
I wanted
but it
one
was
though.
the
I really wanted
2014
one.
model that really embraced its
2014. Okay,
extraterrestrial
gotcha.
theme. The
2014
so-called triad
to I think
design Area
2017.
51 featured a spaceship-inspired triangular case that not only looked nuts, but provided plenty of room inside. Room for up to 3 GPUs, 5 hard drives, and 9 separate RGB lighting zones, each of which were software controlled for maximum gamer aesthetic.
Of
The
course.
idea was the angled design meant users could reach I/O more easily, and that proper airflow could be maintained even if the case was pushed against a wall. But
I guess we see how much that mentality holds up today
it's because it looked neat.
because no one does that
The
anymore.
CDO technology Volta V. Claiming to be the first commercially produced handcrafted wooden computer, the Volta V understandably made headlines in
No.
2017.
They made
Built
computers
by
out of wood in the
technology,
70s.
The Volta V featured a solid walnut case, an understated look compared to the garish RGB
It does look
glass
nice though.
boxes out
I
there.
like that. I
But
like the
that
wooden
hardwood
design.
made it rather costly compared to traditional rigs, ranging from $2,000 to $3,500. I actually got to cover a review unit on LGR back then.
Oh,
and
neat.
it was a pleasure to use and smelled great. Unfortunately, CDO has since gone out of business, but I'm glad they were able to leave a well-varnished mark before that.
Oh, it's all off-the-shelf components. Oh, it's a shame they went out of business. Oh, someone needs to bring this back. This would do so well today, I think. Back then, I think people were more like consumed with the whole gamer aesthetic. But nowadays, man, I think this would be really awesome for small form factor enthusiasts. Oh, look at how nice that is. So you got just an ITX board. It's water cooled because it would have to be. It just uses a ribbon cable to a GPU. It uses a SFX power supply. It's got Noctua fans. This is a bad ass machine, dude. Oh, I want one of these. God, I wish they. I wish. I mean, it would have been expensive because it's like it's wood. It's actual wood. Did you say walnut? I actually don't know what kind of wood it is, but oh god, that looks good. Wait, I didn't know
Acer
that.
Predator 21X.
Yes,
Acer and
this thing broke the internet. I remember. I think it was Dave 2D who I watched. He did a review of this thing. I wanted one of these so bad because back in the day, before I built my first tower, or this came after that, but back in the day, I really wanted like a gaming laptop that I really wanted to be able to play my games on the go, especially when I was going to college because I couldn't bring my desktop with me to college. It was just not practical with all my space in my dorm. But this was like desktop performance in a laptop form factor. I don't think you could actually fit that into a backpack, but still, it's a lot smaller than a desktop. And it had a full that keyboard is actually a full mechanical keyboard. I think that's like a 24. I actually the aspect ratio is kind of weird, but it's like a 20. It's a something inch screen. This right here I think was the it was a second screen or it was the touchpad, but you could like configure it to display different things. The cooling or behind this was absolutely insane. And then the best part, I really hope he shows a picture of it, but the best part with this thing was if you flipped it around and opened it up, it had a desktop chip in it. It had a desktop Core i9 9900K, I think, or 9900. But it actually used an LGA socket. You could pull the CPU out and replace it or upgrade it if you wanted to. That was so cool. I think it came with a 9900, so you didn't need to. There was nothing to upgrade to, but it was an actual desktop level chip. So you got desktop performance, CPU performance out of this thing, which was awesome. It was so cool, and it had a full size mechanical keyboard. I nerded out over this thing when it came out. But what I was so pissed about is that with these, they made 1,000 of them. That's it. They only made 1,000, and I think like 100 of them went out to like reviewers. So realistically, and it cost like the final price tag was like what 7 or 8 grand or something like that. So like it was a very limited product for a very limited market, but I think it's so cool. And obviously, it was one of those things that Acer made. It was a proof of concept, and it's just not practical because like who can afford that? So I know that it's not gonna really kind of come back, and it actually kind of reminds me of the mothership that Asus would actually end up making. I wonder if he's gonna cover that because that was another thing I nerded out about too. But man, this was a cool thing. I was really into this.
2017 had no chill. The Predator 21X was not only the first curved screen laptop,
Oh, it was
but this
curved. I don't remember that.
19-pound beast proved the company designers had lost their minds, and it was glorious.
Yes, it was.
The 4.1 gigahertz Core i7, 64 gigabytes of RAM, dual GeForce GTX 1080s, 5 drive slots, 2 power.
Look at that power brick.
Fans, 4 speakers, 2 subwoofers, a mechanical keyboard, a trackpad that flips over to a numpad, a battery lasting less than an hour when gaming, and a $9,000 price tag.
9,000.
The ridiculous everything, Acer managed to sell the...
Look at that, 2560 by 1080 on a laptop. I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but back then that was big.
entire limited run. meaning there are 300 of these monsters lying around somewhere all around the globe.
Wait, 300? I thought it was 1,000. Oh wow, that's crazy. Yeah, but no, it just shows you like you can find 300 people to buy anything, but the 9 grand for this thing. I mean, it really does. I mean, it belongs in a museum. It's just amazing that they got this kind of performance on there. Like this is probably still more performance for than like some modern gaming desktops.
And that makes me smile. The
I
Hewlett-Packard Omen X.
remember this too. I don't think I ever saw anyone
Compared
buy one, but it was definitely on the front page of Reddit sometimes. Uh, I always thought that this thing, like, I remember seeing it and being like, how did this stand not break? I don't know if it was like made out of aluminum or whatever, but that thing looks way too heavy to stand up on its own. But this thing was pretty cool too. It was definitely out there, but again, it's just so impractical. Look at how much desk space it's going to take up. I don't get the appeal.
by some to a
I like the drive sleds in it though.
Transformers Allspark, the liquid-cooled Omen X was a wild departure from your typical boring HP pavilion. The black and red cube
Yeah.
featured 4 hot swappable hard drive bays,
Yeah.
a separate optical drive bay, and hardware specs that put it well into
That does
gaming
look
PC
cool.
territory. Though it was an absolute space hog.
Yeah.
Roughly 20 and a quarter
course
by
it is.
20 by 16 inches.
I just don't get it.
Double the width of a regular PC case. It also cost between $1,800 and $2,600, several $100s more than competing systems of its capabilities.
Because you're paying for a fancy case with normal PC hardware in it. Why would you do that?
A hard sell, unless you really love cubes rotated 45 degrees. The apes with high-end components that push the limits of portability. But the GX700 took
Looks
this
like a
to
tumor.
another level, claiming to be the first water-cooled laptop on its
Oh.
reveal in late 2015.
It's a water
Yeah,
cooler.
that's right. It's not only a thick beast of a machine on its own, but that huge growth around back docks to the system and connects it to an array of copper pipes inside the laptop.
So you basically have to. What if that dies? If the water cooling pump like dies, is the laptop useless now? Because like it doesn't. I mean, I see fans in there, so it's got some active cooling, but is this thing just absolutely useless without the water cooler? Or would the water cooler, is it optional, but it just lets the CPU turbo up more? That might be it.
Resulting in a claimed performance boost of 48% to the CPU and 43% to the GPU, and a total weight
That seems
of 18.5
optimistic.
pounds.
And it came in a
Super
suitcase.
Super impractical.
Yeah.
CyberPower's Trinity Extreme. For the most part,
I remember this case too. I remember watching somebody do a build in it. This thing, just from the video, because I saw people making a video about it, because look at it, it's ridiculous. This did not look fun to build in. The gimmick, I think, was that in each, not quadrant, but tridrant, I don't know, in each of the 3 compartments, one of them was for a GPU, one of them was for your motherboard, and then the last one was for either a radiator or like hard drive mounts, like a water cooling radiator. So like, the idea was that maintenance would be easier, but it did not look fun because of the cable routing. It just did not look like a good time because you actually have to like route the cables through all these little holes in the middle to go where you want them, and it just looked impractical. But I do like how it looks like a propeller for like a plane or something, like a turbine. But that was pretty cool. I remember watching videos about that. These all kind of like fancy case designs. Again, I wish they brought these back because I mean, obviously they're stupid, but it shows that people are actually like trying new things and trying to innovate, not having the same black box with RGB fans in it that we have today.
systems builder CyberPower plops their PCs into flashy.
Also, it's CyberPower,
relatively standard
so this
shaped
probably costs
towers.
like 7
But
grand
that
too,
restraint
or
was
something.
tossed out the window with the Trinity Extreme in 2015. Assembled in conjunction with Deepcool, the Trinity separated
power
its
supply.
components into 3
Gotcha.
different blades, in theory allowing for better airflow and cooling. One blade holding the
Interesting.
GPU and SSDs, another for the power supply and 3.5
Okay,
inch hard drive,
gotcha.
and the
I
last
remembered.
one holding the ITX motherboard and liquid cooling system. Quite the intriguing layout, with the unavoidable trade-off of taking up swaths of desk space at 18.5 inches wide. And
Fair enough.
finally, Razer's Project Valerie.
I wanted one of these too. I remember this was so awesome when I saw the concept for this.
Full screen laptops.
It was super impractical because the thing would have been so monumentally thick. But the idea for this, and they just never made it. It was at like 3 trade shows, and they never actually made it, which is like I think is so egregious. But I wanted one of these so bad because I mean, look at it. It's a triple monitor laptop. It's awesome. And it's Razer, so you know they have a really solid GPU and CPU in it. I really wish they ended up making it. But also, using that like portably would have sucked because with those monitors cranked up to max brightness, your battery would not have lasted long at all. Maybe that's why they couldn't do it. It's just because the power budget didn't make sense. I don't know.
Sure, that's cool.
But man, it
That's
was
really
awesome.
Cool. Triple screens.
Yeah.
As seen on the Razer Project Valerie, shown off at CES 2017. Now,
And then someone made a Kickstarter
since it never reached
to try
production,
and
but it caused such a stir back then that I had to. The fact that Razer slapped together 3 17-inch 4K displays that automatically deployed at the...
And then didn't someone, I forget what the name was, someone did a Kickstarter trying to make their own like 3 monitor laptop with the screens that come out. I forget what the name of it was, but it was also a grift because they never actually produced any. But they actually took people's money on the Kickstarter, which Razer did not do. But yeah, I need to find out what the name of that was.
touch of a button was absurd enough, but then the fact that it was stolen from the show really took the tech world by storm.
Someone stole it?
Someone made off with 2
Wow.
Project Valerie prototypes from CES, prompting Razer to offer a $25,000 reward for their return. Reportedly, one ended up being posted for sale on the auction site Taobao, though it was quickly taken down. I haven't seen confirmation on whether or not they were ever retrieved, but yeah, it's just such a weird footnote in 2010's computer history that I had to mention it.
That is a really cool design, though. That is really neat. Alright, so that is the 2010s. And that's going to do it for my reaction video today, guys. What I thought was, I thought it was really kind of definitely the 2010s were definitely a blast from the past, because a lot of those designs, when I was getting into building computers in 2014, 2015, when I built my first one, wow, that's 10 years ago now. That's insane. I'm old. You know, this was the kind of stuff that I was looking at on YouTube and on Reddit. This was the kind of thing that was getting me interested, seeing all these really neat designs, seeing how much personality computers had back then. And I think that it's pretty important to go back and look at where we came from, and it gives you a perspective on where we are today. Because like I said, there's computers today, they're the same black box with the black motherboard, black graphics card, and RGB fans thrown in it. No one's willing to take risks. No one's willing to do anything outside the box. It's all just extremely, extremely vanilla. And, you know, I think that the industry is heading more towards the minimalism, an idea of, you know, minimalism as a pursuit. You know, we see more and more small form factor enthusiasts. We see, you know, cable management enthusiasts and people putting connectors on the back of the motherboards to try and help with cable management. So I think that we're shifting away from flash to functionality, you know, taking up less space and making things more efficient for the end user, which I think is very valuable, especially if, from an engineering perspective. I think that that's great. I love it when things are efficient, but I think it's really interesting to see just kind of where we've come from and how cool things were back then. Because that's what really inspired me and really got me interested in the hobby. So to see that kind of era go away, it's depressing, but it's also interesting to see kind of where we're headed. So yeah, I'm really glad that I got to take a look at this, and I think it was a pretty cool trip down memory lane. Let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know what you think of all these designs. You know, which one was your favorite, which one was your least favorite. Let me know. So yeah, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.